Nick Fuentes is wrong on race. I don't watch a lot of Candace Owens.
You don't believe dinosaurs are real.
Dinosaurs? That seems pretty fake and gay.
Or Nick Fuentes. I'm a very busy person. But I keep my eye on influencers from various sides of various issues to keep my finger on the pulse of culture. He's growing in popularity since the death of Charlie Kirk.
Your opinion of me. I'm Middle Eastern, married to a white girl. Or do you think it's better off for America to minimize more of me coming to America?
America is no longer America. Mass migration is changing what America is. And I want to conserve what America historically has always been.
Well, that's a little bit, that's a little bit harsh.
Well, I'm not in favor of interracial marriages. That's against my values.
That's kind of racist.
I agree.
Okay.
But
he went on the Candace Owens show and had some very interesting things to say.
This was the beginning of the end right here.
I just feel like you really have no idea who you are until you start a family. And whether that means just marriage, some people who are struggling to have children, okay, fine. But there's such a growth that happens because of that I think it informs your beliefs in so many ways. And I think that was a huge turning point for me. Like, I wonder if I had been pressed with everything that happened last year, if I didn't have like the unshaken faith and my family, what would I have done? And sometimes when I see the things that you say, I do think, okay, he doesn't take into account family. It's just Nick. Nick is in his own world, which can be, I think, a quite selfish perspective, which is fine. That's what you're saying. You like being selfish is another way to say what you just said. I like being selfish and I don't want to give of myself to somebody else. But
I also think there's something selfless involved, which is to say, I could go and start a family and drag them into a world of mine, which is pretty chaotic. And what's more, I mean, let's also get, I also don't appreciate the lecture. You don't know me, so I know you're married. I know you're older than me, but you don't know me. You don't know my life. You don't know my situation. I don't think you're in a position to give me advice, especially as a woman, honestly.
He essentially says that Candace, because she's a woman, shouldn't be lecturing him on anything in life. I think that's already a little silly. But the man goes further, and he goes all the way to race.
Yes, this scrambled her brain. Yeah, this was it.
I'm trying to understand if you think that it's all Black people are like this, or if your world is kind of colored by, this is what's going on in America. This has failed for 1,000 reasons. Welfareism has definitely, Black people in 1940s, stand up. My grandfather, I talk about that denigration and the corrosion of culture. Yeah. That's happening. White, Black, whatever you want to name it, there is this intentional corrosion of culture. So do you think it's literally, well, this is just what a Black person is when they come out? Or do you think that post-welfare, LBJ, Great Society, this is what Black Americans have become, and I have a right to respond to that and say that as a white man, I don't want to live there?
Well,
This was it.
I think it's more nature than people would like to believe. There's this classic tension of, is it nature, is it nurture? Is it cultural, or is it intrinsic? Is it racial? And I've always been on the latter side of this among conservatives. Conservatives like to say it's all culture. Black America is the way it is because of hip hop music and the Great Society and that kind of stuff. And I think the uncomfortable reality is a big part of it is intrinsic. One of the big arguments against the abolition of slavery in the 1860s.
He actually is going there. He goes on her show. And also the other thing is the reception to this was overwhelmingly, I'm not giving a statement on this. Overwhelmingly, a lot of people agreed with Nick. That's what happened.
Now, the history of racism is complex, but the fundamental issue here is very basic, and I'll cover it. In the 1700s, there's something called scientific racism that emerged. And what I'm going to suggest to you is that racism, in this modern sense, is a specifically modernist, anti-Christian, anti-Catholic view. There was a pope who called out racism as a form of materialism, and I think that's correct. Now, Nick didn't bring this up, but it is a common thing in scientific racism theories of the past to act as though the physical traits of the cranial size in Africans is, on average, smaller than those in so-called white races. Now, I think there's only one race, the human race, that we're all made in the image of God, created with Adam and Eve. But this is to reduce, this is why I say it's materialist, why a pope said this is a materialist, modernist, really atheist view. You are, to say these things is to reduce humans to physical or material traits. But there's a transcendent element to humans in the Christian Catholic view, the biblical worldview. Even if the premise is true, which I don't grant, that black people inherently are, in general, less intelligent, less moral, less creative, whatever it is that he thinks, it's still a faulty premise. His conclusion doesn't follow. And I just want to give three considerations and warn against this. I'm going to pull some people back from what could go very, very south very, very quickly. This has never led to anything good in history. One, human rights are not based on intelligence, on creativity. An individual with Down syndrome has the right to life. This person has the right to worship God. The unborn in the womb still has the right to life. It's a human being in an earlier stage of development. This is true for black people, white people, Jewish people, Asian people. Human rights, dignity, and moral worth are based in humanity being made in the image of God. If you take away God from the equation, it's very difficult to see why human beings have worth, why we have rights. You add God to the equation and we're all made in his image. And talk about intelligence or height or athleticism or anything else it's a moot point to talking about human rights, dignity, and moral worth. The Enlightenment, for the progress that was made, lost a lot. The narrative that I was fed was that the Enlightenment was this step forward into reason, into science, into freedom, and that the Middle Ages and the ancient world were just full of darkness and contemptible things that we, with our democracy and reason, have overcome. I don't think that's a true narrative. I think it's propaganda, essentially. In the Enlightenment, at the rejection of traditional Christianity. Now, George Washington was a Christian, Jefferson was a deist, Voltaire was some sort of deist, Adams was a Unitarian, rejected the Trinity. So there's some sense in which they're still affiliated with Christianity. Some of them, I think, legitimately were regenerated people. There was the idea, though, that as Catholicism had been rejected, that it was sort of replaced with this thing called nationalism. Not the belief that a country can have some say over its borders or maintain its identity. No. The idea that the state in some way is replacing religion. This became associated with race. Slavery existed in the ancient pre-modern world, but there was something different about the slavery that Aristotle talked about. There's something different about the slavery in the Bible. I don't think these were good systems, but they're different fundamentally from the slavery in the modern world. Aristotle thought that, as in keeping with many in the ancient world, that those who were conquered could justly be enslaved. There's a form of debt payment that came from indentured servitude that, had the scriptures actually been followed, every few years, every 7 years, slaves would have been freed. Now, people were greedy, they don't always follow that. But even in the Bible itself, this was sort of a form of debt payment, and they had to be freed every 7 years. The modern world made this specifically about race. And just give you a quote from Thomas Jefferson. Now, he changed his mind a bit over the course of his life. But Thomas Jefferson said, "Comparing them by their faculties of memory, reason, and imagination, it appears to me that in memory they are equal to the whites, in reason inferior, as I think one black person could scarcely be found capable of tracing and comprehending the investigations of Euclid. And in that imagination they are dull, tasteless, anomalous. I advance it, therefore, as a suspicion only, that blacks, whether originally a distinct race or made distinct by time and circumstances, are inferior to whites in the endowments both of body and mind." Jefferson was saying something that was actually popular at his time. The idea came about that black people and white people were actually created separately, that they didn't have one genesis, one origin. Darwinism probably didn't help with this view of viewing certain types of people as inherently inferior because of physical traits. This became used to justify all sorts of terrible things. Black people, and to some lesser degree, Native Indians, are just sort of worthy of slavery because they're taken care of by their masters, and the black people, well, they just, they can't build 3-story structures on their own, apparently. So we'll just enslave them and we'll give them places to stay. This is literally racialism. I'm going to tell you why this is just silly in a second. But I want to say Jefferson did sort of, was forced, I was pleased to see, to change his mind a bit. He makes comments like this a couple times in the Notes of the States of Virginia. But he actually says when he was, he read the letters of a man named Benjamin Banneker, who was a very educated black mathematician, who was a very intelligent person. And Benjamin, of course, wanted equal treatment for his fellow blacks. He wrote to Thomas Jefferson, and Jefferson, realizing this man is quite intelligent, says, "Nobody wishes more than I do to see such proofs as you exhibit, that nature has given to our black brethren talents equal to those of the colors of other men, and that the appearance of a want or lack of them is owing merely to the degraded condition of their existence both in Africa and in America." Meaning, for example, that they don't have proper nutrition, they're not able to rest, they're in survival mode because they're in slavery. They're not able to advance in the same way we are because they're surviving. Now, both of my personal experience, I have a lot of friends who are just all over the map, ethnically, in beliefs, and I've worked with people and have friends with, who are, I have black friends. You can call me racist if you want, but many of these people are highly intelligent and highly educated, and there's no difference, substantial difference in my intelligence and theirs, or any white person that I've met. That's my personal experience. But did you catch it? Nick made a fundamental mistake right away. He assumes that if black culture is deteriorating, I think all cultures in the West are deteriorating. Black culture, white culture, which are sort of made-up terms. He takes this back to intelligence. And it seems to me Nick thinks that the moral state of the black community is something to do with inherent lack of intelligence or inferiority from whites. This is stupid. It's already off topic, but to follow him down this rabbit trail, I've known plenty of people who are not blessed and gifted as much academically, intellectually, as other people who are more moral and decent and kind and charitable, with more courage, more fortitude than some of the academics or intellectually gifted people that I've known. This is already, to me, stupid. Whether white, black, Jew, Asian, whatever, your character, the virtue that you have, your loyalty as a friend, has very little to do with your IQ. There are saints in Catholicism. There's a saint who is a simple farmer. There are saints in Catholicism who are grand philosophers, some of the greatest minds to ever walk the earth, I think, like Aquinas. But there are also just simple saints that don't have those intellectual gifts, but they're no less saints. Where does the idea of human rights come from to begin with? The idea of moral worth, that human beings have some type of intrinsic dignity or right to life, whether you're unborn or born, whether you're black or white, Jewish, Asian, anything else. Well, in the Western tradition, this really was influenced deeply by an underlying question: what are human beings? In the materialist view, and I'm not knocking evolution as a system, but Darwinism as a system, as a way of viewing the world, falls into that category. Nazism, eugenics, these fall into modernist, materialist, reductionist views of human nature, and lend themselves to people feeling that if they are stronger, smarter, whatever, they can take advantage of others, and that somehow is a good thing.
Greed, for lack of a better word, is good. Greed is right. Greed works. Greed clarifies, cuts through, and captures the essence of the evolutionary spirit.
This is inherently anti-Christian. There's a simple verse in the Bible. However you view the book of Genesis, whether it's a true myth or literal history, the scriptures paint a picture of who God is and who humans are. And God said, "Let us make humankind in our image, according to our likeness, and let them have dominion over the fish of the sea, and over the birds of the air, and over the cattle, and over all the wild animals of the earth." So God created humankind in his image. In the image of God created he them. Male and female created he them. Human beings have one archetypal ancestor. Really two, that's Adam and Eve. Whether you're black, white, Jewish, atheist, Muslim, Christian, anything else. And it's because Adam and Eve, and thus us, are made in God's image. We're all created in that sense, equal. Human rights, human dignity, moral worth are based on the truth that we are made in God's image. The point being, even if we grant Nick's, I think, fallacious appeal to an outdated modernist, essentially atheist, scientific racialism, I don't grant that at all, but even if we did, he's already off base. Black and whites, everyone else, are still equal in terms of moral worth and dignity. I'm going to read you a couple quotes from Tolkien. These are the letters of Tolkien, the letters of J.R.R. Tolkien. And someone asked him about whether or not Middle Earth was Aryan, essentially, Aryan. And Tolkien said Hitler was just an obnoxious, ignorant, ruddy idiot, basically. And I think Hitler was fundamentally wrong about race. Now, you can sympathize with the Germans for they were being treated unfairly, certainly after World War I. I don't think Germany ever recovered from the Reformation, in my view. It's a fragmented culture, still is, unfortunately. But racialism wasn't the answer. And it's been said that the Aryan race is superior. It's a silly thing. That's not even what the word Aryan means. So Tolkien says, "Thank you for your letter. I regret that I am not clear as to what you mean. I am not of Aryan extraction, that is Indo-Iranian. As far as I am aware, none of my ancestors spoke Hindustani, Persian, Gypsy, or any related dialects. But if I am to understand what you are inquiring, whether I'm of Jewish origin, I can only reply that I regret that I appear to have no ancestors of that gifted people. My great-great-grandfather came to England in the 18th century from Germany. The main part of my descent is therefore purely English, and I am an English subject." He also mentions that the time is not far distant when a German name will no longer be a source of pride due to current events in his day. But he also says in a later letter, talking to someone who asks about Middle Earth being spiritually a Nordic Europe. And that's not, again, what Middle Earth is about. That's not what Tolkien is getting at, is racialism. He says, "No, not Nordic, please. A word I personally dislike. It is associated through the French origin, or though of French origin, with racialist theories." He's rejecting those modernist, racialist, rationalist theories. There's no question to my mind that many of the things that modern people take for granted are false. And I've complained a great deal about Marxism, deconstructionism happening on the left. The globalism, I think, has become a real problem. Not just being kind to immigrants, but sort of forced immigration, bringing in people for labor by globalist elites. I can complain about these things all day. The erosion of culture, we no longer have a unified culture, a belief system in the West, to the point where even belief in rights or really anything, we no longer share those things as a society, whether you're in England, the United States, Canada, all those things are going away, and it's tragic. I've complained about that, but the answer is not to let one demonic idea move you into reaction into another anti-Christian, frankly, demonic idea. So here's what I'm going to suggest to you. Racialism is not the answer. Talking about the inferiority, the supposed inferiority of one group of people based on race or gender or anything else ain't the answer. That historically has just brought bad. Here's a few things you can read. First of all, In Defense of Sanity by G.K. Chesterton. But this is an interesting, if you want a better rounded, more full, I think, Christian Catholic view. The worst indignities. This is something I use for reference. The worst of the indignities, the Catholic Church on slavery. You'll find in this book papal encyclicals, writings of saints, black saints, a more full view of slavery, the tragedy of slavery in the world, that isn't based on some leftist, Marxist, biased view to just take down a society and reshape it in its image. It's a very honest book, I think. It's good to give you a better rounded perspective. This is The Popes Against Modern Errors. These are other papal encyclicals or documents from really against Marxism, the excesses of capitalism run amok. Many of the things that were ideas started to go wrong in modernity. For all the things that we've gotten right, we have gotten so much wrong. But the answer is not fascism. It's not racialist theories. It's not eugenics. It's not scientific racism. The answer is Christ and his church. So do me a favor. Nick is supposedly a Catholic who goes to Mass often. Will you do me a favor and pray with me for his soul? Because at this point, hearing these things, I am concerned for the man's soul, and I want this man to be saved. So please pray with me for Nick Fuentes and for Candace Owens. Whoever you are, I hope you know your life matters, whether you're atheist, Jewish, Christian, Catholic, Baptist, black, white, Asian, or anything else. Your life truly matters, and the things that we do in this life matter. They'll echo through eternity. And we know that because God is real and God loves you.